Chapter 1. Our Journey Begins. It was a warm summer afternoon and the sun was setting. The day was about to end for many, but it had practically begun for one. A man who wore a gray hoodie was running like his life depended on it. Though his life wasn't on the line, he sure felt like it was. By the time he had stopped running, he had arrived at the back of the spring stadium. Though it wasn't meant to open to the public in a week, he was able to get in. You see, this guy was chosen among 600 people to become the mascot for the spring gym, at least their mascot for this specific generation. After checking to see no one was watching him, he quickly took out his keys and used them to open the door before closing it just as quickly as he got inside. He took off his gray hoodie and tied it around his waist to reveal his blue springy hair. Looking to his left, he saw a slightly older man with green hair waiting for him.
"Well, you made it, Austin."
He spoke in a voice that was similar to that of an old-school hero.
"Yep. How late am I, William?" the blue-haired man named Austin asked. "Not that late, really. Still a few minutes late, but still not that late." Didn't expect that, really. "Well, maybe this means you're finally setting yourself into an actual routine now. But enough of that. Let's see what you got."
After tossing Austin a pair of basic boxing gloves, a practice fight among them had begun. Normally, fights like these would be regular boxing matches, but this was by no means a boxing match. This was a one-on-one arms fight. The rules of this practice match were simple. Whoever fell down twice lost the match. The match began when William threw a punch at Austin from across the arena. Though he narrowly avoided it, he was caught by another punch flying at him that sent him into the ground. Getting back up, he flipped back into one of the trampolines on the sides of the stadium and sent a punch flying towards William. This caught William off guard, but was not enough to knock him into the ground. What was enough to knock him into the ground, however, was Austin taking advantage of his guard being dropped to grab him. After he had pulled him close enough, he hit him once before throwing an uppercut, sending him flying. Once he had landed, he got back up and attempted to throw another punch. Austin dodged it and was almost caught in a flurry of punches when William had activated his rush. In all honesty, he didn't expect it to happen, but there weren't any rules outright banning it, so anything was fair game. In an effort to dodge this, Austin had raised his arms up to the jumbotron and raised himself just high enough to avoid getting hit. Once the rush had ended, he jumped down and grabbed William, practically sending himself flying towards his opponent and hitting him 2 times before sending him into the ground. This led to Austin winning the match since he had been able to knock his opponent to the ground twice. Soon after their practice match, they were left to take a break. William was chugging a water bottle he had brought while Austin was deep in thought. Something felt off to him.
"Wait a sec,"
he spoke up in an unsure voice.
"What's up?"
William asked.
"William, why was I the one chosen to become the next spring man?" "Don't you remember, Austin? You were chosen because you stood out above the rest." "But wouldn't they have changed their minds if they found out who I was?" "Austin, if there's one thing I can tell you, one's past doesn't define who they become later in life. If it were the case, then I don't think most Hollywood actors would be where they're at."
Austin simply nodded along as he spoke. He'd been told the same answer every time he asked William this sort of question. He didn't want to tell him, though, since he was sure he wouldn't get any kind of a different answer.
"I think you should head back now, son," William inquired. "Your debut is tomorrow, and you're gonna need the energy to get through it."
He nodded his head as he walked out of the stadium. Slipping his hoodie back on, he walked to the bus station so he could go home. By the time he made it to the bus stop, he had just barely made it on time for the last bus on the day. And thank God he did too, because it was 8 p.m. and dark out. The bus ride itself wasn't much. There were 20 other people counting himself and the bus driver. The drive itself was also kinda quick since his apartment wasn't that far away. By the time he had gotten off the bus, he had made it back to the apartment complex. And he wasn't the only one there. An older man who appeared to be no older than maybe 50 was carrying a cardboard box. He was wearing a yellow pineapple button-up and his arms were made of neon-colored paint. Walking near him was a young girl with brown hair tied into a bun who appeared to be his daughter, carrying a box and a backpack. She wore a slightly big lime green hoodie that had black sleeves, which she had rolled up to reveal her neon-colored arms. A white eye patch with a cartoony eye doodled onto it covered her left eye. What lied behind it was a mystery to anyone who caught sight of it.
After grabbing their keys from the landlord's office, they started traversing through what felt like a maze of apartments. The landlord said that wasn't that far away, so where was it?
Oh dear best photo apartmento.
The man muttered under his breath.
Dad?
The girl following him asked. He sighed as he turned to face her.
Yes, Tracy?
I think our apartment is over there. She extends one of her tricolored arms, pointing towards a dark green door that was labeled 103-F. The father looked over to the door and had a look of mild embarrassment plastered on his face. He walked to it and inserted a key into the lock, clicking open as he pushed the door out of the way. The interior was rather modest and there wasn't a whole lot of color. What little color existed came from plants and a couple of paintings hung upon the walls. These were likely left behind by the previous owners, since he couldn't remember decorations like these being seen when he found the apartment online. The two entered the apartment and set out to unpacking the things they had brought with them. Tracy, his daughter, worked on decorating her room, while her dad stuck to unpacking the things he had brought for the kitchen. He was just about to wrap things up when he noticed that there was something at the bottom of the box he left on the counter. He looked in and saw a relatively small picture frame. In it was a picture of him holding a sleeping baby next to a woman and their son. Both of them had green arms that seemed to have leaves poking out, almost as if their arms were made of vines. Andre stood there as he looked at the picture in silence. It had been a while since he had seen his wife and their son, and he was worried he wouldn't see them again. He just hopes that he'll get to see them again before he dies.
Hey, Dad?
He was brought back to his senses when he heard his daughter talking to him. She was holding the box she used to carry most of her stuff.
What do you need, kiddo?
He asked her in as chill of a tone as he could fake. I think I might have misplaced one of my posters when we were packing,
she said while lightly shaking the box she carried.
You happen to know if that signed WVBA poster was anywhere in your box?
Are you talking about the one with that really short boxer? What was his name? Tiny Pasta?
You mean Lil Mac?
She inquired. Yeah, that guy. And yes, I found it while placing the plates in the cupboard.
He hands her the folded up poster, which she then places into her box.
I still don't get why you're such a big fan of him.
Probably had to do with how he managed to beat up everyone without having to use the same cheats everyone else had. I'm honestly surprised you haven't caught on even after taking me to one of his matches last year.
He gave an eye roll at his daughter's sarcastic quip while slightly chuckling. He still wondered how that boxing league was okay with allowing any of their fighters to cheat.
Also, I want to ask you another question.
Hit me with it, kiddo.
Why did we have to move out in the first place?
Andre was silent when she asked him that. He felt as though he could stay quiet on some aspects, but knew he should give at least some kind of explanation.
You know how you have the ARMS ability?
He spoke as he regained his composure.
Yeah, it's kind of something you don't easily forget.
She replied in mild confusion.
Well, we moved here so you could be enrolled at Assemble High. I wanted to make sure you went to a high school with others who were like you.
Tracy thought about what her father said for a moment. Eventually, she seemed to get the idea and piped up with an,
"Oh, that makes sense,"
before going back to decorating her room. Andre stood there with as good of a smile as he could make on his face, waiting to make sure his daughter wasn't within earshot. He sighed when he was sure she couldn't hear him. Picking up the photo he had in the box, he walked over to where his own bedroom was. He placed the photo of him and his family on a nightstand as he got onto his bed. He laid there as he stared into the ceiling, lost in his thoughts. While what he said to his daughter wasn't a complete lie, he was still leaving out a lot of the story. He wasn't sure he could explain to her why they came back, or more importantly, that they lived there in the first place. The last thing he wanted to do was get his sweet daughter to remember the incident that caused them to leave in the first place. After a while of thinking, he started to doze off, drifting off into dreamland.